Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff. Welcome back to Big Stuff, where today we're asking how are you really? And I'm asking if you've ever felt like the only one doing the emotional heavy lifting in your relationship. Maybe you are reading the books, you're going to therapy, you're having breakthroughs, you're listening to podcasts, and you are still having the same fights with the same defense mechanisms from maybe years ago. Today, we're digging into the emotional gap, that place where maybe you are growing and it feels like they're not. And it stems from a listener question from someone who I'm calling emotionally drained. And the question went like this. Hi, Danielle. I've been in a relationship for 3 years now. I've done so much personal growth work, therapy, self-reflection, communication workshops, but my partner hasn't made any effort to work on themselves. I'm constantly the one addressing our issues, suggesting solutions, and managing the emotional labor. I'm exhausted by it, and I'm starting to resent them. How do I navigate this gap where I feel like I'm doing all the work while they coast along? This question isn't just about being at different places in your spiritual and emotional evolution. It is about something deeper. It is really about that emotional gap. The emotional gap is when we're talking about that emotional availability. So there's also like an emotional responsibility and then somebody's growth velocity. What I mean when I'm talking about that is somebody's willingness to reflect upon their thoughts, actions, behaviors, communication style, but also what is driving their responses and their reactions from a deeper level. So if one of you is doing that reflective work where you are recognizing your deeper patterns or understanding perhaps your family programming or the things that have come before this relationship that have formed the way that you are in the world, if one of you is doing that reflective work and trying to understand yourself on a deeper level and the other is simply being, then it's almost like you're playing two different games. When you are just in that state of being, as in I respond the way that I do, I am the way that I am, this is the way that it is, it can be very difficult for the person who's doing the emotional work to continue to get through on a level that is satisfying and meaningful. The problem here is not the gap itself. It's more about what the gap represents. So John and Julie Gottman from the Gottman Institute have some research about this, and they say that partners actually don't need the same emotional intelligence level. You just need to be moving in the same direction. So ultimately, this means that you need to be growing together, not growing apart. Now, regardless of the relationship that you're in right now, we all, I imagine, I know I certainly have been in relationships that are growing apart. Perhaps when you started together, you were on the same road, on the same journey, heading in the same direction, and then for whatever reason, you start to splinter off into different directions. Maybe one of you becomes more interested in something that the other one is not interested in. That doesn't mean that you have to live in each other's pockets and be into the same stuff all the time. But there needs to be enough stuff to keep you guys together. And you can grow apart in lots of different ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You don't need to be completely in each other's pockets, but you need to have a compatibility in your direction. Because sometimes love and a desire to be together just isn't enough when you are both sort of moving towards different things. It can look like you're moving in different directions, but you're thinking about it too literally. Sometimes you need to think about it more laterally. For instance, in my own relationship, I remember when I started getting very interested in spirituality, and I was going to some retreats, I was going to some events, like conscious events. And I remember coming home and being really concerned that I was growing in a more sort of spiritual area and my husband was not. And I said to him, what happens if we just end up growing in the wrong direction? And the reason that this is at the forefront of my mind is because I had been married before where we grew in very much opposite directions, and we have continued to do so over the 10 years that we haven't been together, so much so that I imagine we both now are like, wow, I can't believe we ever thought we were compatible, because it is really evident that we're not. So I have the fear that that might happen in this relationship. So we have regular, not constant, I was going to say constant, but regular check-ins to align with each other and check in how we're going and where we're going so that we can stay on the same page. Now, I broached it with my husband and said, I'm really worried that I'm going to go down this route and you're not. And he said, well, I'm actually really interested in that stuff too, just not the way that you are doing it. And then he went on to explain about his love of martial arts. Over the years, my husband has had two very significant masters. So they have gone into the Eastern philosophies and the disciplines of martial arts, which are deeply rooted in spirituality. So when I came to him expressing my fear that we were moving in very different directions, he sort of said, you find your spirituality in this area of life, and I find my spirituality in this area of life. And if we remain open to each other's version of and ideas around spirituality, then I think you'll find that we have more in common than we don't. And so that was really interesting for me to know that there is this more lateral way of thinking about it also. But then there is the very real reality or possibility that when you bring these understandings to your partner, they simply shut it down, they're not interested, and there isn't that level of lateral connection at all. There is nothing. They don't get it. They're not into it. And perhaps they begin to shut you down, which feels bad. There's no doubt about that. It feels really bad when you are trying to share something with the person that you love and they are simply not interested. So if you've become the emotional project manager in your relationship, as in you're the one recognizing when things are out of alignment, you're the one that is doing all the work to come back and do the repair if there are altercations or moments of conflict. If you are the one who is always seeking to understand their point of view rather than it being a reciprocated thing or something where you both really seek to understand each other in moments of difficulty and conflict, then it's really easy to start to become resentful. A relationship is a balance. It's a two-way thing. It needs to feel like everyone is participating, not just one person is doing all of the work and the other person just gets to reap the benefits of that work. Because that inevitably, when you are doing the work, it makes you more compassionate. It makes you more curious about what is driving certain thoughts and responses and behaviors. And when you become that, then you can inevitably absorb more of the other person's if they're not doing that similar work as well, understanding what is underneath, what's going on for them, what why are they responding or thinking or reacting the way they are? Where is their fear coming from? Where is their reaction, their constriction? Where is their stuff hiding under the bed, basically. And it can become very lonely to feel like you are the only one doing the work in the relationship, right? You can be doing all of the heavy lifting and they might be picking up what you're putting down, but they might also not be. I think the emotional gap becomes really big if they do not pick up what you're putting down. So that means that they're not interested in the slightest. They're not interested in understanding on deeper levels what their programming is or why they respond certain ways. They're not interested in understanding at a deeper level the dynamics that go on in your relationship and essentially being as kind and supportive as possible in relationship, therefore creating minimal harm and minimal damage at any time. Sometimes when we're operating from the hurt parts of ourselves that end up hurting others as well. So when you're doing the work and you're inviting them to see things in a new way, if they are picking up what you're putting down, that means that they are open to understanding and looking at it in a different way. That is a different place to be in than in a place where somebody is absolutely not interested, calling you woo-woo, saying that you're going, off the reservation, saying that you're getting all hippie, saying that you're getting, they're belittling your experience of self-reflection or self-actualization. So are they willing to come along for the ride? Yes or no? I think that puts you in very different positions. The hidden costs of this gap can be that you start to have that identity erosion, which means that you shrink yourself, hide this understanding or awareness, or hide parts of it in order to avoid any mocking or any derision or any defensiveness. And then there's the depletion of your energy is another hidden cost. And that means that you're putting so much energy into either avoiding any weirdness or conflict within this relationship because of this growth, or you are spending so much time trying to bring this person along for the ride with you that you're sucking your own energy that you could be putting into more juiciness for yourself. So that becomes a bit leaky energy because you're spending so much time trying to bring somebody else along for the ride with you. The other hidden cost can be that opportunity cost, right? So you are missing relationships because of the energy that you are giving to this one. That doesn't necessarily mean romantic relationships either. That can be any kind of connection that elevates, nourishes, nurtures this part of you versus the one that takes from it. We've also got, and this is a very real hidden cost, future self-betrayal. And that means that you're ultimately betraying the person that you are becoming by trying to play small, to stay in the space or the shape of expectation from the other, as opposed to allowing yourself the full expansion of who it is that you're becoming. So ultimately, their resistance to your growth is information. And it's information that you can use to make a decision on how you feel about that. If you're okay with it, then it's not a problem. You might be able to satisfy all of your spiritual and self-development needs outside of that relationship, and you're perfectly happy with the status quo being what it is, and it's okay if this person is not that for you. Or you might think, actually, if I had somebody who was in this with me in enough of a way that I could really explore all of these different aspects of myself, then that would be much more delicious. But you can't force someone to come along with you. I remember a spiritual mentor of mine, I had this conversation with a spiritual mentor of mine, and I said, I'm going to these weekend retreats, I'm going to these conscious events, I'm up-leveling my spirituality and my awareness and my understanding of consciousness and all things self-development and even esoteric. And I'm worried that my partner is going to get left behind. And she said, you can't force him. Because I said, I've asked him to come along and he would hate this kind of thing. And she said, you can't force him. She said, imagine yourself on a treadmill, right? And you're running on the treadmill and you're saying to your partner, like, hey, come out here, like, get on the treadmill next to me and, like, come for a run. And they're like, ew, I don't like running or I hate treadmills. And you're like, no, get over here, get on this treadmill, like, come next to me, like, let's go for a run, let's do this together, like, get on the treadmill. And then you build this resistance. She said, instead, if you are on the treadmill and you're just doing your thing, right? If you're on the treadmill and you're having a great time and you're reaping the benefits and you're feeling the explosion of energy that you have when you start doing it regularly, and you're feeling the physical benefits of your lungs getting stronger and you're able to run further and you're able to run faster, and that gives you a sense of achievement and satisfaction. She said, if you do all of that and you're modeling how beneficial it is for your life, rather than being like, get over here and get on this treadmill, you're just doing your thing, and maybe they start going, oh, that looks kind of cool. I see the benefits of that in your life and I can see how that's really working for you. Maybe I'll, like, sneak into the gym and jump on of my own volition because I can see how well it's working. So you can't try as much as you'd like to. You can't force somebody onto the treadmill of spirituality or self-development. However, they can be enticed if they're ready. But you can't stop growing. You can't stop becoming this version of yourself to stay safe within the relationship or to not threaten their expectation of who they think you are or who you should be. Your growth also cannot depend on their participation. This is a solo thing, and it's great if someone wants to come with you, but if they don't, that cannot stop you from your continued growth. Maybe there is a conversation that needs to be had. Maybe it is about inviting them, saying that what you really desire or what you really need in a relationship is to know that you're both committed to becoming the best versions of yourself, and that can look different for both of you. Right now, my own husband's specialty subject is human sort of performance or spiritual and physical and emotional well-being through nutrition and exercise, whereas I'm digging deeper into spirituality and consciousness. And it's not exactly the same, but we're both on a trajectory of being more optimized, in touch humans by taking care of our physical selves and our emotional selves. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. It just needs to be moving in the same direction. By saying to your significant other, I need this in the person I'm going to be with, and I wonder if you're interested in growing together, or are you just happy where you are? And that might tell you a little bit about their mindset. Perhaps they don't have a growth mindset. Perhaps they have not a stuck mindset, I don't want to say that, but perhaps they sort of believe that this is how they are and this is how they're always going to be. And that's okay. But you get to decide then if that is enough for you. You get to decide what you can actually live with. Is this okay with you? What are you open to accepting? Not what do you think you should accept? You can't change somebody else, but you can change how you feel about their choices. But you also need to have that reflection first and understand whether you are making a compromise or not. So you've really got three options. I think you've got three options. As Mel Robbins says, you can just let them, right? You can just accept them fully as they are, let them do them, you do you, and do that without resentment or hoping that they'll change. Because that is where the conflict comes in. It's not who they are or how they are right now. It's your expectation and your desires of who you want them to be. So if you can just accept them without trying to change them, you do you, they do them, sweet. You are completely on the right track. That's fine. There's no problem. The other thing you can do is create some boundaries, right? You can stay where you are, stay in the relationship, but create some boundaries around what you think is acceptable or not what you think, I suppose what you find acceptable and what you do not find acceptable so that you can protect your energy, okay? So that might be about how they respond to the things that you're talking about, or the level of interaction or the level of joining in. Or the third option is maybe creating some space. Love them from a distance. That's okay too. I'm not suggesting that anybody does anything drastic. I am just suggesting that we have awareness of what we are not changing, we are choosing. So if you are choosing it, then choose it with surrender and without resentment or trying to change somebody else. So what if this isn't a problem that you need to solve specifically? What if this is more information that you can use in order to decide how you want to honor this relationship and this person and where they are right now in their life? It's a lot. Some might say it's big stuff. Some might say it is big stuff. But we're only ready for the growth and evolution that we're ready for when we're ready for it. And everyone has got to do that in their own time. So with that, I wish you a wonderful week dealing with all of the big stuff. If you have a how are you really that you would like me to address, feel free to drop me a line at bigstuffpod@gmail.com and share with me how you are doing. How are you really? And maybe, just maybe, that will become a podcast for another week. Until then, take care. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to each other.
I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more big stuff.